All right, and we're about 2 minutes past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is John McGreal. I am currently the Director of Admissions and Enrollment Management at Bellin College, which is located in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So if you haven't heard of us, that's okay. I'm here to help evangelize a little bit about that as well, but mostly here to talk about scholarships and financial aid. I know that, when we look at research and when we do all the work that we need to do in order to help students find their way to college, the number one thing that always gets brought up why students either don't enroll or don't continue and complete their degree is cost. So I want to do my best tonight to kind of pull back the curtain. This is your chance to ask me, a supposed expert in the field, everything you can about financing your education. So I will talk a little bit about myself, just so you understand my credentials outside of my fancy title there as Director of Admissions. I've spent about the last 10 years working in higher education, all in enrollment management at 3 very different institutions. So my first job was at Rockford College in Illinois. It was a private liberal arts institution with about 900 undergraduate students in total and another couple hundred graduate students. Then I started working for the University of Alabama. I was there for about 7, 8 years or so up until, well, last month. And there, obviously, that's a large public state university that operates in that vein with a lot of different opportunities along those lines. And now I work for Bellin College, which is a private health science focused institution up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So all very different types of schools and lots of experience that I can talk about when it comes to financing your education. Additionally, I am the past president of the Wisconsin Association for College Admission Counseling, and that's a group of about 350 professionals who are either on the college side, like myself, on the high school side, like Mr. Hendricks, or as I know him, Brian, or folks like independent educational consultants or college access organizations like College Possible or organizations along those lines. So I come with a pretty wide breadth of experience when it comes to talking about this. So hopefully that means I'm qualified. And like I said, over the next about 20 minutes or so, I'll do my level best to answer every question you've got. And I do have time set aside specifically at the end for questions, but if something pops into your mind right now and you don't want to forget about it, feel free to. My pal here from Revolution Prep is going to monitor the chat box for me and pop in if any questions are topical with what we're currently discussing. So I do want to give you a little bit of the roadmap. We're going to talk first about different types. I've broken it out in kind of 2 areas: types of scholarships and financial aid. So first, we're going to talk about different types of scholarships, because historically, this is where most students receive the bulk of their financial aid from, is from scholarships. And then we'll talk about kind of some of the nitty-gritty financial aid, FAFSA completion stuff towards the end, and give you a checklist specifically for that, because I know it can be a little intimidating if you're uncertain of where you're headed. And I want you to all know that I'll share these slides with Mr. Hendricks. So if you do want access to them later, he will have them after the fact. All right. My contact information will also all be at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to email me. Feel free to give me a phone call. Unfortunately, the number I've got listed is a landline, so I guess you'll have to pick up a cell phone and actually call me instead of texting. But I'll be more than happy also to chat over email if you like. So first, let's talk about some different types of scholarships. You can see I have 4 listed here for you: merit-based, endowed, competitive, as well as outside scholarships. All right, so merit-based is exactly what it sounds like. You've been kicking butt in high school, you've been taking care of business the last 3 or 4 years, you're doing really well, and we're going to hopefully award you a merit-based scholarship. All right. To give you an example, at the institution I used to work for, we had some merit-based scholarships that were specifically built off of GPA and test score before we went test optional. And so if you had a certain GPA, certain test score, boom, you got a merit-based scholarship. And that is kind of how merit-based scholarships work. All right. If you're succeeding in high school, based on certain criteria, the college or university is going to award you some scholarship money based off of that. Okay. Then you have something like an endowed scholarship. This is typically something that it has a very specific purpose, right? So the institution, for instance, perhaps like at Bellin, we have scholarships for students based off of what field that they want to go into, right? So you're specifically applying for that. And usually they're what's called endowed or created by members of our alumni or alumni community, or even just donors to the institution. That is for a very specific purpose. For instance, there was a scholarship at Alabama that talked about students who had a terminal disease, for instance, or a chronic disease that was going along with them. And there was a specific scholarship for someone. I think it was called the Addison Toole Scholarship. That's because the person it was named for, Addison Toole, had a chronic disease. So you have some different opportunities that way to receive some of that endowed scholarship money. Additionally, you do have competitive awards. These are when you hear about scholarship deadlines and scholarship applications you need to complete. That's where we're really going to look at those that's where competitive scholarships come into play. Is we're going to look at all of that information you provide us and hopefully award you some scholarship money. But you are competing against other students who are applying to the institution as well. And then you do have outside scholarship money, all right, where, maybe your parent's employer has a scholarship that you could receive, right, because they're employed there and you can receive a scholarship. Or if you're like me and happen to be Irish and German and living in DuPage County, Illinois, which I doubt any of you are going to school in Milwaukee, but I was able to find a scholarship for literally that, being Irish and German and living in Illinois. So those types of things exist. There's also, a number of other strange ones that come up, right? Like a scholarship for being left-handed. A buddy of mine, Eric Ruiz, who's actually the director of admissions down at the University of St. Francis, my alma mater in Joliet, Illinois, actually received a left-handed scholarship. He had to shoot a video of doing things with his left hand. So he did a cartwheel, he threw a ball, he wrote an essay, and all sorts of different things talking about how being left-handed had impacted his life. So there's those different scholarships out there. So I encourage you to kind of seek those things out. You'll notice these can be lumped into kind of two categories. Number one, scholarships from the institution itself. That's merit-based, endowed, and competitive scholarships. And then scholarships from outside the institution, right? So that's going to be those ones I mentioned towards the end. Now, how do you actually get these? All right, there's a few things I'm going to encourage you to keep in your mind's eye. Number one is deadlines, right? You want to make sure that you are understanding and taking care of any deadline that you might have for those scholarship applications. I know we are very, very strict about when we're going to open our scholarship application up, when we're going to close it, and ensure that deadline is going to be met. That's usually, it can space any time between about, usually any time between about November and about January 15th, January 31st, something like that. So you want to make sure that you know what those deadlines are and you're able to go ahead and complete that scholarship application on time and get it in. So you want to ensure that that's taken care of. So as you're creating that to-do list for colleges, or maybe you're like me and you like a good Excel spreadsheet, you've got a column for that, or you've got a notation of when those applications are going to be due. Okay. Additionally, you'll want to ensure that you're going to seek out guidance. And this can take form in a couple of different ways. You all have a fantastic resource in Mr. Hendricks. He's one of the best college counselors that I've had the privilege of working with over the last decade. So he's a great resource for different scholarships, both internally and externally at DSHA, as well as your school counselors. Will have some great information about that as well. So you want to talk with them about what scholarship opportunities exist, especially when you're looking at high school-based scholarships and any of those other competitive or outside scholarships. You also want to talk with your admission counselor a fair amount. Folks like me who do this for a living get into it not because we like the minutia of day-to-day operations or anything like that, but we do it because we love working with students. And at the end of the day, if I can award additional scholarship money, I want to, right? So I want to award as much scholarship money as possible and help you get that scholarship money you need in order to have success at my institution. So you want to seek guidance out of what we're looking for, right? And don't be afraid to ask that question and to say, hey, I'm not sure what you're looking for on this scholarship application. What do you really need? And we'll be more than happy to tell you what's typically successful and what we're hoping to get from you. I also encourage, especially if you have to write essays or really anything having to do pertaining to a scholarship application, is to have it reviewed. Really have someone at your high school, maybe it's your school counselor, maybe it's Mr. Hendricks, maybe it's a teacher that you trust really well, or that you trust a lot, or even your folks, right? To review what you're submitting before you submit it, so that it is error-free. And I will say this, if I had $1 for every time someone put the wrong institution name in a scholarship application, I'd have a lot of money. So make sure that you are, if you're applying to Bellin College, you're applying for scholarships with us, that's the name you're using. Or if it's, Marquette, that you're saying Marquette University, and making sure you're changing that up, even if you're using the same essay for multiple opportunities. The other big thing I would encourage you to do is really take a look at that application and ensure that you know every single piece that you need in order to complete and submit it. Because sometimes that can be a little bit involved. Sometimes they're a little bit simpler, and that's fine too, but you want to make sure that you're getting everything taken care of within that time frame. One other thing that I should have mentioned within guidance is there are kind of some free tools that you could utilize, and I'm going to drop them in the chat box for you all to see. So you have something called fastwebs.com is a website that you can take a look at. You have scholarships.com, as well as something called Scholly. Now, Scholly is those first two are search engines solely for scholarships. You put in some criteria, and it spits out a bunch of scholarships that you can apply for. You'll be competing against a lot of other people, and these are those outside scholarships I mentioned, a lot of other people during that time. But you do have that opportunity to really look at those scholarship opportunities and see what you could qualify for. And then Scholly is a little bit different. So it also is a scholarship search engine, except for one thing. It does cost a little bit of money, and I apologize for that up front. But it's a very powerful tool. So it not only, it'll be a little bit more involved for what it's asking for from you. It'll ask you to fill out all of your interests, maybe some leadership experience, maybe some work experience, clubs and organizations, whatever it might be, on that. And then it will match you with a bunch of scholarships and put it into a timeline order of the due dates for each of those scholarships. So it's pretty powerful. And if you're willing to dedicate a couple of hours a week for sure to finding scholarships, something that can be really beneficial. I had a student who told me that she actually found over $60,000 worth of scholarships and was awarded about $40,000 worth of scholarships through Scholly. So for her, it did end up paying off, because she treated it like a part-time job looking for them. So just a little bit of a piece of tip, a little piece of advice and a tip for you all as you're taking a look at that. All right, I do want to shift gears a little bit to financial aid. How many of you, and I say that as, it's all just blank screens, but I'm sure you've heard this phrase, the FAFSA, which is a little bit of it's an acronym that stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And there are basically 4 different types of aid that can come on that. All right, you have your subsidized loans, your unsubsidized loans, your grants, and work study. So what I'm going to do is give you kind of a 30,000-foot view of each of those, and then we'll kind of dive on into the FAFSA itself. With standardized loans, or subsidized loans, I'm so sorry, I can't even read right now. With subsidized loans, those are loans that will not accrue interest while you're in college. They're at a locked interest rate. They come out in the student's name. They're deferred until 6 months after graduation. They won't enter repayment until then. And it's at like I said, a locked-in interest rate. All right, usually it's about half of what the market rate is, plus about 2 to 3 percentage points. So last I saw, it was around 6% or so, adjusting for the fact that market rate's a little bit lower right now because of some federal laws that have been passed. But you also have the unsubsidized loan. That's very similar to the subsidized loan with one distinct difference. It's still the locked-in interest rate. It's still deferred 6 months till after graduation. It still comes out in the student's name, but it will accrue interest while you're in college. Okay. This is what some people might describe as self-help aid. I know loans can be a dirty 5-letter word, and you hear all about the student debt crisis and things like that. But it is a way to help finance your education. And if done responsibly and taken out in the amount that's solely necessary, you can kind of manage what debt you come out of college with. And like I said, they are deferrable until after graduation. So you have the opportunity to make sure that you are employed by then, right? And make your having a great job. That's why a great question during your college search is, what's the job placement rate like at your institution, right? I'm very proud that at Bellin, we actually have about a 99% job placement rate because we're healthcare focused. And one thing that is always needed is healthcare professionals. So then you have grants. This is free money that can be offered. This is typically offered based off of the family income. And there's really 3 types of grants that you might see. You might see the federal grants, which is the Pell Grant, or the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, the SEOG. We have a lot of acronyms when it comes to financial aid. And that is just free money awarded to you from the federal government based off of the income of your family. Then you may also have the Wisconsin grant, which is specifically a grant if you're attending a Wisconsin college or university. So if you attend, for instance, Bellin College or St. Norbert or Lawrence University, for instance, you can apply a Wisconsin grant to that institution. But if you went to, say, the University of Alabama, you would not be able to apply the Wisconsin grant to that school, right? Because it's not located in the state of Wisconsin. And like I said, that is, again, based off of family income, and you do not have to pay it back. And finally, you might see institutional grant money. Depending on the school, they may have grants set aside for similar purposes and awarded for different reasons, whether it's financial need, whether it's excellence in a specific area, or something along those lines. You may have some institutional grant money that you can receive. And finally, there is work study. Okay, work study money is a little bit different from these first 3, or 4 if you want to count scholarships. They all come straight off the top of your bill. Work study actually comes in a paycheck to the student for working a job, typically bi-monthly, right? So twice a month, 15th and 30th or whatever it might be. So when it comes to that work study money, there's usually a limited pool at each institution. So even if you qualify, you do have to make sure that you're getting a job and you're working the hours that you're allowed to receive that work study money. And you can use that money in a couple of different ways. I was a work study student in college. I had a great on-campus job where I was a tour guide and got to work campus events. I was a Saints ambassador is what they called us. And I was able to go ahead and earn some money. And what I chose to do was split it 50-50, 50 for me, 50 for tuition. So I was able to have some spending money as well as work towards paying my college tuition at the same time. All right. So that's something to keep in mind as well. If you get an off-campus job or something like that, you can always treat it in a similar fashion also. Then I wanted to include this. This is a FAFSA checklist of different things that you will need to do in order to kind of go through this process. All right. So I told you the different types of aid. So first, step 1, you need to get a PIN, and you apply for that with having your social security number and applying for it at pin.ed.gov. Then you'll go on and fill out the financial aid paperwork, or the FAFSA. Again, that's FAFSA.gov. If you search financial aid, there's going to be some scammy websites out there that can happen. And I put that warning up there because it's free, and these websites that are scams are going to actually charge you. So remember that the first F in FAFSA stands for free. It's a free application, so make sure you're filling that on out. And you'll need your tax info. One great thing that occurred about 6 or 7 years ago is that they actually can import your tax information if you filed your taxes electronically. If you filed them by mail, sorry, but you're going to need to have them in person, but you can actually import your tax information, which is pretty nice. I encourage you to make sure you're filing for financial aid, especially if you're juniors, in October when it opens up. The big reason is if you do qualify, say, for a WE grant, there's a set amount of dollars within that. And the sooner you get it in, if you qualify, the more likely it is you'll receive it, because sometimes it can run out. So you want to make sure that they are getting that filled out pretty quickly. The Department of Education processes the paperwork and sends the information to the colleges that you choose. You can actually select up to 10 colleges to have this report sent to. So whichever ones you're applying to, and I encourage that list to be between 7 to 8 schools, really. Too many is gonna get you loaded down on essays and application fees and things like that. And it will generate something called a student aid report. I just realized there was actually a typo on this slide, so that's a little bit embarrassing, and I did copy this off of someone's website, so sorry about that. As well as the expected family contribution, the EFC. I do want to give you a quick warning on that EFC. It sounds like something it isn't. The EFC is merely an index for what we at institutions can award you based off of your financial aid application. It does not mean that's how much you're going to have to pay. So if your EFC is $1,000, you're not going to pay $1,000. Likewise, if your EFC is $99,999, you're also not going to pay that much. Right? It's all going to be dependent on the institution itself and how we as institutions award you financial aid based off of that. And that's step number 4. How much do you get? Schools are going to determine that. And based off of that EFC from the SAR that we see, the student aid report. And you'll be able to compare financial aid packages between, excuse me. Oh man, between institutions. One thing I will encourage you to do is look at the total cost after you deduct everything, because institutions are all going to have different fees, different tuition rates, and you might receive similar financial aid packages or even large financial aid packages from some and smaller financial aid packages from the other. But at the end of the day, what you want to look at is what your total cost out of pocket is going to be. So it's real simple. It's tuition, courses, tuition, course fees, room and board, minus scholarships and financial aid to see what that overall number is as you're going through. So I know that was a really brief overview at a high level kind of overview for scholarships and financial aid, but I did want to ensure that I left some good time for questions. We've got about 5 minutes or so. If there was something you wanted to ask me, you feel free to hop into the chat. You can unmute yourself if you like, if you have that capability. Greg can tell me if you don't or not, but I'd be more than happy to answer whatever questions you all
They
have.
do. You can unmute yourself.
And while you all are furiously thinking about what you want to ask me, my contact information is up here. I am more than happy to talk with you offline as well about scholarships, about financial aid, about Bellin College if you want, whatever it is. I'm more than happy to. One of my all-time favorite things to do in this profession is work hands-on with students and families to make sure you understand the process, because it can be a little ambiguous at times. One, last bit of free advice that I'll give out there is, a lot of times I'll hear students say, "Oh, I'm not going to apply for financial aid because I'm not going to get anything." That's actually wrong. You might not get grants, you might not get that free aid, but you will be awarded and offered the ability to take out those loans. And again, I know that's kind of taboo at times, but the loans do serve a need that if that's the way you're able to finance it, we can help make your college dreams a reality. And if you do it in a smart and responsible fashion, it can be pretty limited. In fact, the federal government sets a limit on the amount of loan aid that can be offered each year. So actually, if you stick to those limits as a way to help you finance instead of entirely finance, you can actually ensure that you're graduating with far less than the national average of debt, and hopefully have that career to kick everything off and help you pay for it. So with that, I will shut up. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer them for you.